Welcome to Meet RX Success Stories. I'm Brooke here at Meet RX, a coach, and I'm very happy to be speaking to Caelin today, who's going to share with us what it's been like for him on his carnivore diet. Hi, Caelin. How are you?
Hi, doing well. Thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time to share with us. And now you've been carnivore for a couple of years now, is that right?
Yeah, so I've been carnivore for about 2 years. I switched over after listening to the infamous podcast with Dr. Baker. So
yeah, that was a great podcast. So what was going on for you during that time?
So when I first started, I actually was brought to the carnivore lifestyle from having some pretty severe stomach issues, and also you might say some mood instability that I was pretty dissatisfied with. So I actually was at the point of going to schedule an appointment with a gastroenterologist, and then I saw somebody posted that very day on Twitter, and I hadn't gotten on Twitter at all at this point, but I had gotten onto Twitter and somebody posted, hey, I had IBS and I've done this carnivore diet for the last 90 days and look at all my symptoms that I feel. So I was kind of like, well, this seems pretty sketchy, but let me look into it. So I listened to the podcast with ShawnBaker and Joe Rogan. And after that, I kind of maybe deep dived over the next few days, and I listened to the podcast with Michaela Peterson, the other podcast with Jordan Peterson, a few podcasts with Amber O'Hearn, and some of the things from, I believe there was a carnivore summit in maybe 2019. And that provided a really pretty good baseline of information. And so rather than continuing to research this, I just hopped in and started doing it. So I started off pretty basic, just eating a lot of ground beef and other things. I know a lot of people want to start off, and I suppose I started off that way as well. Like, am I going to survive? How will I live without carbohydrates? But I had pretty good motivation. At the time, I was really, involuntarily using the restroom 5 to 15 times a day.
So can I ask you, so that IBS that you mentioned, was it in your colon? Was it the colon that was irritable or inflamed, or what would you say?
I don't actually know. I never went to the doctor for it. This was something that I was always a little bit uncomfortable with. I just know that I was going to the bathroom an excessive amount. So I knew I had an issue there, and it was one of those things where, when I got the urge to go, I couldn't really do anything about it. So that was pretty disheartening. But so I don't actually know on which it was. It was undiagnosed. I have zero doubt that if I had actually gone to the doctor, they would have put me on some sort of pill and done all sorts of things that I'm so thankful that I did not go now. And I just took a little bit more of a proactive, contrary to the, what the normal opinion of the mainstream medical establishment might be. I took a different route, and I'm very satisfied with it.
So when you started, was it an immediate kind of relief, or were there some problems that continued, or what was that like for the IBS?
Yeah, so that's actually one of those things that didn't clear up super fast for me. I know it does for a lot of people. I continued drinking coffee, which I've subsequently learned that it just doesn't really work with me. Even if I go with the Bulletproof brand or, all the best coffees, they still cause a lot of gastric distress for me. And so when I initially started carnivore, I yeah, I kind of did a more of a loose carnivore, thinking, oh, this is probably good enough. I would say it really cleared up once I eliminated the coffee a lot. But certainly if I have any fibrous things, it still will flare up pretty quickly. So, starting off was a little hit or miss. I love spicy foods. I love condiments. And so, I would be like, I'd go a week of, pretty nice, strict carnivore. And then invariably I'd be like, well, a little barbecue sauce won't hurt, or just a little steak sauce, or whatever it may be. And then of course it hurt. And so it was a slow process of just realizing and actually learning of it was really beneficial, because I could get feedback where I couldn't get feedback before, because it was like everything was messing with my stomach. But if I had a week and I was like, okay, everything seems like it's calming down, and then I have something that I shouldn't, then I got pretty immediate feedback for that. So I was able to learn pretty quickly. One of the mistakes I would say that I made kind of starting off was with the coffee, and then I was like, okay, well, maybe I can do heavy cream, as there's no carbs in that, etc. But a lot of the cream or heavy cream that you will buy from your local store has, I think it's carrageenan, or however you say it.
Yeah, gums. Yes, carrageenan, which is really destructive
Yeah.
to the gut. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's so bad for the gut. And so I learned probably a year in that that was something that was irritating me, and I just hadn't put it together. So it was a little bit of a slow process for me, but I would also say within the first month, I saw probably a 70% improvement,
Wow.
which was big. I mean, this is a 70% improvement is huge. It's like, hey, I've got control over when I go to the bathroom now, and
Yeah.
now
Yeah,
I've got
that's life-changing, actually.
yeah, pretty life-changing, and life-changing in more than one way, of deciding, hey, how am I going to structure my day? Where am I going to go? Am I comfortable going on vacation? Am I comfortable going on vacation with certain people, who, like, beforehand I was like, yeah, these people aren't really going to understand if I have to stop all the time or have issues. And then so it certainly life-changing in more ways than I would have imagined, or previously thought.
What a relief. That's great. So is the motility on a day, like a daily bowel movement for you now, or what's that like?
That's a good question. Yeah, probably daily, sometimes every 2 or 3 days, and sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. But it's much more consistent. And I would say the most important thing is being able to have control over it.
Yeah.
Whereas, if I go to an event and I have dinner and, we'll say it, creeps up on me, I'm fine for another 3 to 4 hours, and of saying, okay, like, I know my stomach is reacting a little bit here, but I have a choice. Whereas before, there was no real choice with how my body was reacting, and that was that was really very not cool.
Yeah, really disconcerting. No, I've spoken to many people who've dealt with the same thing. Yeah. Well, good for you. And then while this was going on, what were some of the other changes that you experienced?
Yeah, so one of probably the change that I'm happiest about is the change in mental stability or mental clarity. This sounds trivial almost, of like, oh, I felt more clear-headed, or I had more stable emotions. Through my early 20s, I worked in a nightclub, and I've done all sorts of things that you wouldn't believe, and made all sorts of decisions that, looking back, seem way out of character. But having stability mentally is probably the most important thing, because that leads to daily consistency. And you have to be consistent daily if you want to build in your life. And so for anybody who has, I know a lot of people identify with anxiety and depression, and I'll probably catch some flack for, being critical of a lot of what's out there, and what's promoted as mental disorders, et cetera. But really having some sort of control over your mental mindset is imperative. So it really allowed me to have a mindset that I was able to reach beyond myself and start making better decisions. For whatever reason beforehand, it was like I was making first order decisions, and that's like if you have 2 kids and, you place a cookie in front of each and you say, well, you can have a cookie now, but if you wait, you can have 2 cookies later on. Well, I was like unable to make, a delayed gratification decision. But this is like if you want to have success in life, you have to be able to make, you have to use delayed gratification. You have to negotiate with the future. And once I started doing that, then I was able to optimize my entire life. And so it sounds rather simplistic, but I think it's helped me clarify everything else and sculpt everything else around my life. So that's probably my favorite benefit, even over the gut stuff. But these things go hand in hand, because if your gut is upset, you cannot have mental clarity.
No, they absolutely do go hand in hand. The health of the gut and the gut-brain axis, it goes hand in hand. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people bring up the possibility of parasites, which not that there were necessarily parasites going on, but that is also gut related and brain and decision making related, like toxic plasmosis, that parasite that changes, that alters the decisions of mice, right, and cats and human beings, for instance.
It's huge. And I know a lot of people have a lot of very strong opinions when it comes to parasites and those sorts of things. I'm sorry.
Do they? Yeah.
I have friends who are very strongly opinionated both ways. It seems like an interesting divergence, how people from different cultures approach these things. And for whatever reason, people in the Western world think we're somehow immune, or we've somehow stamped out parasites or have not gotten them. But I grew up on a farm, and we dewormed our sheep every 6 months. Yeah. I mean, this is like it's kind of a known thing. And if you're not careful, I mean, humans can get these things too. Humans we're susceptible to all sorts of things.
Yeah. And when our gut lining is weakened, with permeable gut, then
right,
there's all kinds of things that can go on, and allergies and autoimmune problems.
Yeah, that reminds me, it's unbelievable, but invariably every time I would cheat, I would suddenly develop allergies all over again. And it was like I never had allergies, and then for maybe 5 years before carnivore, I started to have allergies, and I was like, oh, I guess this is just what this is like, and just kind of accepted it. And then I after a few months of carnivore, it was like, wow, I don't actually have any allergies, because these things, for whatever reason, are not making it through. And having allergies, I don't think is a natural state of being. I think it's, I'm not a medical doctor that knowledgeable about this stuff, but it's amazing how much your food can affect having allergies. And if you have a leaky gut where things are getting into your body that are not supposed to be there,
right,
it's really bad, really fast. And I mean, you can just lead to all sorts of downhill effects. And perhaps the most pernicious problem is not knowing that these things are creeping in. You just slowly accept them, and that's really harmful.
Yeah. I'm curious of where that about that time, to explore that time when things were kind of improving, like at the beginning, but not completely improving, and that it took a long time. What was that like? Because I think that sometimes for people, they're like, okay, so this isn't really helping. But I mean, so what was that time like? How much time, and what were the improvements? Was it like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or what was that like? Explain to us.
Yeah, that's probably maybe not the best question for me, because I kind of fell in love with carnivore as soon as I started it. But I've been in the health and fitness world for years, so I understand, look, it took me at the time, I was 31. It took me 31 years to get where I was. And just because I changed my diet, I'm not going to see an immediate change tomorrow. But I did see an immediate change in my pocketbook. I was spending way less money on food. I eat around 2 pounds of beef per day. And at the time, I was able to go get, even if I wanted to have steaks, I could go get steaks for on sale a lot of times for like $5 a pound from Kroger. So my daily food costs were $10, $70 a week. And the freedom that I had after about 3 weeks, not having to wake up and think, do I want breakfast tacos this morning? Or maybe I want oatmeal, or maybe I want this, that, or whatever. Like, I was freed from these cravings.
Yeah.
And once that freedom hit me, and once I had a freedom of time, because I could buy 30 pounds of meat, throw it in my freezer, and then normally I'll fix up 4 to 5 days worth of food in advance. And then I use the New Wave cooker, which is probably the best thing I found for reheating meat. The infrared oven is phenomenal. And I would just heat stuff up. And so I kind of immediately fell in love with it. And of course I would backslide and say, well, maybe I want some condiments. So I want some barbecue sauce, or I want, mustard. I mean, mustard is like, such a big one. It's like, I can have a hamburger patty with some mustard on it, and I would do that. But every time I would get feedback, and there's no failure, there's only feedback, is kind of a adage that I live by. And so each time I would have obvious symptoms or feedback in the form of maybe not feeling as well, or maybe I found that I was getting hungry more than I should, in which case, I could tell it was altering my blood sugar, or, whatever hunger hormones, grilling. So it was just a constant thing of learning to make those better decisions, and realize, I'm getting feedback from my body every single time.
Yeah.
And of course, after I first started it, I was on it for about 3 months, and then Thanksgiving rolled around and I decided to cheat. It didn't seem that worth it. Once I started to realize, I was like, okay, wow, this was a really good meal that I enjoyed for 30 minutes, but then I felt bad for like 3 days.
Yeah.
It was like, was this really that worth it?
So at this point,
Yeah.
what were you eating besides beef and salt? Or did you go down to just really simple beef and salt for a while as a reset?
Yeah, I was actually at around beef and salt there. And actually before that Thanksgiving, I had done an 8-day fast just for fun, because I'm masochistic like that. So I was pretty much beef and salt, but I was having coffee or tea, and really dropping the coffee made the biggest difference. Tea, for whatever reason, seems to I seem to tolerate quite well, but coffee was really the thing that once I dropped it, I saw my gastric distress just almost evaporate.
Was it the coffee or was it the carrageenan and the cream?
I gave up the cream first,
You
so
did.
I didn't do it all at once. I'm a big believer in cutting things out slowly. The most effective thing you want to do is just get the end result, even if it takes a little bit longer. So I cut that out, and then of course I cut the coffee out for like a week, and I was like, wow, I feel really good. And then of course I smelled some coffee, and I was like, I'll have a little bit. And I did that little dance with myself over probably 2 or 3 months of going a few weeks, no coffee, and then have coffee for a few days, and then of course be like, okay, this is.
Well, I mean, it's worth it because things change.
They do change. So that's made a pretty big impact. I used to drink a pretty fair amount of alcohol. And I found after maybe about a month of doing the carnivore diet, I just really had no desire to drink, which was really cool. And if I did have the desire, the hangovers got so bad from even like 2 drinks. It was just like, okay, I just can't do this. For whatever reason, it made the, like I would never get a hangover from like 1 or 2 drinks beforehand, but it made the feedback there just so miserable. I was like, yeah, I just don't have any desire at all.
Alcohol really opens up the tight junctions in the intestine.
Yeah.
And so then when you have alcohol and French fries or something, you're really hurting your gut,
Yeah. Yeah. So, once I stopped that, it was just like, okay, this is going to take some time to heal. So I've been on it for about 2 years now, and I cheated over that Christmas, but then, we were coming into 2020 and all the pandemic stuff started happening. And I was just like, okay, well, if this is going to happen, I just loaded my freezer up with a bunch of frozen ground beef from Costco. And I was like, okay. So it was really pretty easy. So I maintained the carnivore diet really rather strictly. And then I never tested positive for COVID because I didn't go get a test, but I had it in June, and, I just made it through no problem. And I knew I would, because it's like, okay, I've got unbelievably stable blood glucose levels. My body feels super optimized. I'm getting sun.
Yeah. And you didn't have the inflammation that you had before.
Exactly. I didn't have the inflammation, and I wasn't putting the things in my body that would give it the inflammation.
Exactly.
So that made a pretty big difference.
So what is your carnivore diet? Carnivore diet is animal food. So what is yours? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So I like to lean more towards calling myself a mitochondriac, kind of like Jack Cruz, except I don't necessarily eat all the other stuff. Like I still do carnivore, but I think it is important to mix the diet with getting adequate sunlight, not spending time under artificial lights. I actually have a Faraday cage around my bed because I live in an apartment, and you would not believe the levels of electro pollution that I have here in Dallas. So I think all those things are important to consider. But as far as my diet that I, with a lot of the food that I eat, primarily I eat beef. I eat a lot of ground beef. I primarily eat a lot of ground beef because the local grass-fed, grass-finished place here in Dallas, it's the Provision House for anybody who's looking for a place in Dallas. They ran a sale back in March to sign up for ground beef at $6 a pound, which I thought was a real steal for the grass-fed, grass-finished, and they're really great people. So I got that, and I eat about 2 pounds of ground beef a day.
Is that a subscription setup?
It is. I pay in cash, so I just go at the end of every month, just because I prefer to keep some of my money like that. But yeah, they have a subscription service, and they deliver it to people all over DFW, Houston, I think Austin as well, and they actually ship, I think, all over the country. but so primarily I do a lot of ground beef currently because of that. Otherwise, if I go get some other things, I pretty much won't buy meat unless I have a special occasion that costs above $7 a pound.
Yeah.
That's just the price point that I've listed for myself because I believe that I'm younger and I'm attempting to start some businesses and other things, and I want those resources to go elsewhere. And I think it's important for people to realize that you can be healthy on a very modest budget. Like you don't have to go buy $30 a pound
tomahawks.
Steaks. Yeah, tomahawks all the time. You don't have to be doing those things. You can very reasonably get a chuck roast. Like I got some chuck roast the other day from Whole Foods for $4.49 a pound. And I cooked it up in the Ninja Foodie Grill, I believe. But I've done it in a pressure cooker. I'll cut it up into steaks and throw it on the grill, and it's delicious, So like,
are you still doing this kind of like cooking the meat ahead of time, like for days ahead? Did you said that you mentioned that at the beginning?
Yeah. So
I'll do that.
Yeah. So with chuck roast, I'll buy say 8 to 10 pounds because I know I eat pretty consistently about 2 pounds a day, so I'll buy maybe 10 pounds. I'll go cook it up on the grill to maybe a medium rare. And then the New Wave infrared cooker, and you can not spend a lot of money on these. You can get one off of Facebook Marketplace oftentimes for like $30 to $40. But for whatever reason, and you don't want to stand beside this thing because it puts off huge magnetic fields, but most cookers do. You can heat up a steak, and I swear it sometimes tastes better heated up than freshly cooked.
Wow.
So it works really great. So I'll cook up 10
do you freeze these leftovers, or do you just refrigerate them?
I just refrigerate them. They seem to be fine. Some people have a histamine intolerance.
Right. I was going to ask you, especially with the gut issue, you didn't find that histamine was a problem for you.
Yeah, it doesn't seem that way for a month or so. I tried cooking everything fresh. Oftentimes a lot of the food that you buy from the store already has higher histamine because it's been sitting there if you're buying the fresh stuff. So if you want fresh, the best way to do that is to get frozen, I found. And then you have to basically cook from frozen all the way up, or, de-thaw it the day before if you want to have the lower histamine levels. I just haven't seen that that's been an issue with me. My father has histamine issues, so it's a real problem for him. But, like I seem to be fine with a lot of barbecue, that sort of thing, which I believe has much higher histamine levels. So that's just not really a huge issue for me. But I'm sorry.
Very good. Good for you.
Yeah. But to supplement that, I'll also do some salmon. I'll oftentimes, like if Whole Foods has oysters, I'll just buy the oysters myself. And YouTube videos are horrible. If you know somebody who knows how to shuck them, get them to help you first, because I almost punctured my hand trying to do
I know,
that.
it's so scary. What I do is I just toss the whole bag of oysters on the grill, and then wait till they just start to open, and then take them off, and then I can open them really easily because they're kind of open themselves because it starts to steam.
Right.
They're not really fully cooked, and then I eat them that way.
That is a great idea. I'm going to try that next time because so I'll add in some different things. I'll do some liver every now and then. I'm not crazy about the taste. So I've tried to do the frozen liver in the little chunks, and doing that. And so I think, maybe it's probably beneficial to get some things like that in, but I have not incorporated a lot of that, and I seem to be still cooking just fine.
So it sounds like you're mostly sticking with beef and not other meats like chicken and pork.
Yeah, I very rarely do chicken. Every now and then I'll do some pork. I'll do some bacon, things like that, but they're by far like not a staple. It's really, I have to just really want some variety. And I found that I'm actually happiest without variety to a degree. Like I just want to do what works because I have a lot of other stuff that is more important to me than trying to plan the tastiest meal that I can. So
yeah, you can't beat beef. I mean, beef is just, I mean, you can't beat ruminant meat.
yeah,
Beef is
yeah,
really
you can't beat it. And it's just a priority factor for me. Like I want to feel good. I know I feel good off of beef, and I value my time a lot. Like I value my time more than I value what something tastes like most of the time. So that's just not something that I think about. I know it's a really big deal for a lot of people.
What about eggs and dairy? Do you incorporate that?
So I do incorporate some eggs and raw dairy. I found that I pretty much have to scramble my eggs. Sometimes I'll get a little reactive to the egg whites. When I do eggs, like say over easy, I just don't seem to feel well. So I've really found that I have to have my eggs pretty fully cooked. I can't, have even a runny yolk for whatever reason seems to be bothersome. I will do some eggs every now and then. There's a farm up the road here in Texas. You have to go to the farm that it's bottled on to get raw milk.
Nice.
I'll be honest, raw milk like changed my life for a few months. I was driving up there every week, and it's a pretty long trip, and I'm probably going to more here soon. I've just got a lot on my plate. But I found that raw milk was incredible because I would always have gastric distress from every variety of milk that you're getting at the grocery store, or cream or whatever else. Even when you can go to Whole Foods and buy, I think it's like the Kelowna brand or something that has the heavy cream with no additives in it.
Is that the A2 or A1 or there's like, I think that's Alexander.
No, it's not that. It's just heavy cream. It just doesn't have any of the additives, so it's like 100% heavy cream. But of course, it's pasteurized.
Yeah.
And I don't think they homogenize it for any reason, but for whatever reason, it again, it upsets me. So, but the raw milk that I get from the farm is unbelievable.
Well, but that's a fantastic resource.
Yeah, so that really allows for quite a bit of variety if you have a local place. I would just encourage people, if you're in the DFW area, find a place that there are several places that will pull the cream off the top on the milk. And so you'll really get, and these are some of the larger places, you'll buy a gallon of raw milk, but you'll get only half the cream that you normally would. And it's just not the same. And I think it's kind of a poor business practice, personally.
Although I know there's people that prefer to have it to not, to have their cream separated, that they want just milk, lighter milk, and then maybe they'll eat more butter or something.
Yeah, I totally support that. I don't support farms trying to market something as not pulling the cream off the top, but then like clearly doing that. So
that's like cattle rustling.
yeah.
Well, that's great that you're able to have a broad diet of lots of different types of animal food. I think that's really great, and that you have those resources there, and you're seeing these really good results. And what did you notice, like in the gym, or you're working out?
Yeah, so I think we were talking about this before we actually started recording. I had been put on testosterone replacement therapy at like 24 years old. I could go into all sorts of theories about why that may happen. I was also put on Adderall in college, and ended up getting a degree that I absolutely did not want in accounting. But of course, once I got off the medication, I was like, wow, this does not jive with my personality at all.
Well, Were you,
So
excuse me, were you having those gut issues then at that time?
actually, I would say that they went hand in hand with the Adderall, and my gut was never the same. And I actually, I can't prove any of it, but I think it's all interrelated to my testosterone, for whatever reason, tanking in college as well, because I got kind of weak and started sleeping more and had mental fatigue and, just all the classic symptoms. But anyways, I had finally had a girlfriend at the time who had a family practice, or her family was involved with it. So she was like, you need to go get tested. So I did, and my testosterone came back. It was like 136 nanograms per deciliter. So it was pretty low for a 24-year-old. Somebody who, especially because I hold a lot of muscle naturally. So I was still big, but my ranges should have been more in the probably 700 to 900 range. So it's really pretty low there. So I ended up, I was young, and I tried to get it up naturally. Of course, I had a doctor who was a osteopathic physician, and she was like, oh, well, if you really want to heal this, then you need to go vegetarian. So I went vegetarian for like 3 months.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, that really tanked things good. Yeah. If it wasn't low before, it was low after. So anyways, I went through quite a few different diets over the following 7 or so years, trying everything. I mean, I used to be like, okay, maybe I need to do the $20 to $30 salads from Whole Foods, I'm getting all the colors, surely something's got to click here. I'm taking care of my body. I need, more smoothies. It was just like all the information that I was getting was like, the information I'm getting from my body is like, okay, I know I am not optimal, but why can I not seem to get to an optimal state? I'm listening to all the experts. I'm listening to what they say. I'm doing what, what a lot of people are talking about. And it just wasn't happening. So I tried a lot of those, but after a year or so on carnivore, I actually decided to come off of testosterone myself. And I had tried to come off with a doctor previously 2 times, and then once myself. And every single time I had tried to come off, I mean, I was like suicidal. It's horrible to anybody who's trying to have their emotions balanced. When your hormones are off like that, I mean, it's like your whole life is falling apart. Even though you know what's going on, it doesn't change that you're still having these feelings. And it was really terrible. But after a year of being on carnivore, I decided to come off, and I successfully titrated myself down over a period of about 2 months. And I came off, and lo and behold, I was fine. Now, I was pretty tired for the following 2 to 3 months. I could really only work out about 2 days a week. Because I could tell, my body was just naturally getting things to come back on. But after 3 to 4 months, things seemed to balance out, and I'm actually probably stronger now than I was when I was on testosterone replacement therapy. I probably have a little bit more fat on my body, but I'm still pretty lean. I may not have veins showing through my abs quite as well, but I was also working out harder last year. And so, I could imagine within another 3 months, I might be back there just as lean. What I did see, though, by coming off of testosterone replacement therapy was my blood pressure had been elevated for several years, which obviously can cause all sorts of renal problems, cardiovascular issues, etc. My blood pressure fell off. My beats per minute heart rate dropped significantly. They used to be, even while sleeping, I measure my sleep with an Oura ring. Even while sleeping would be between the 70 to 80 beats per minute. And now it's more in the 50 to maybe low 60 range. So had a solid drop there. So there were some pretty clear benefits that also happened by getting off of that medication. And then the mental stability that I had to be able to go through that was just, I cannot overstate how important that was. And now I feel much more calm. And I'm just not a fan of drugs. Having been put on enough by enough doctors at this point, for whatever reason, even being on testosterone replacement therapy, I felt this almost like buzzing, this sense of like heightened, just heightened something, not like myself. And so now I feel much better. So it's
yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
The calm is nice.
Yeah, it's pretty important. I can't explain why that has made a difference, but it definitely seems to have made a difference.
Yeah, I think that there's something about beef that does that, CLA or something, but there really is a certain kind of calmness. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's twofold. I tell a lot of people, they are always asking me, hey, what are you doing? What sort of protein shake do I need to add to my diet? What do I need to do to look like you or be like you or whatever? And I'm like, it's not about what you're adding, it's about what you're taking away. And I feel pretty strongly that I've gotten such better results from a reductive approach versus an additive approach. At least since I started carnivore, that's helped out so much. So, rather than trying to add so many things to my life, by taking them away and making things simple. People forget when they go to do something like this, they're like, oh, I'm going to try a new diet. And they make it really complicated. But, look, complexity is the enemy of execution. If you want to execute, make it simple.
Sounds like a good
Good
plan. Yeah, sounds like a good plan. It sounds, and I'm glad that it's really working so well for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for sharing that. I think that's going to help a lot of people, especially about that. If you want to execute it, then make it simple.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing that I hear with, I'm a pretty big evangelist on telling people about this. And I have a lot of people who are like, oh, I think I'm going to try this. And then they don't, because they're focused on, well, can I do this? Can I do that? Can I, they're trying to find all the ways that they can somehow cheat. And it's like, this is not a test where you can maybe cheat here or there in school. Like, this is your body, and just make it simple, do
it for yourself.
Yeah. And don't worry about trying to keep up with stuff for the first 90 days, don't worry about, everybody's always worried about calories or their macros or whatever else. I'm like, don't worry about any of that. I mean, keep it so simple that it is just like a toddler could do it, and just stick with it. That's all you have to do is stick with it. And that's probably the most difficult thing for most people.
Keep it simple. Yeah.
Well, be disciplined. I'm a big fan of Jocko Willink. It was really in these last few years that I learned, I used to think that I had freedom by having a lot of choices. And then I realized, I really had freedom from having discipline and reducing the choices, reducing the varieties that I'm going to give myself, and I think even Steve Jobs was a fan of this, of, rather than indulging in, I believe I read in his biography by Walter Isaacson, that, he didn't want to enjoy sushi or something too often. And these days it's so common to meet people who are like, oh, I love sushi, I'm getting it 5 times a week. And it's like, how much are you appreciating that? So.
Well, also it sounds like you were really listening to your body, and your body was right there giving you your feedback. So
I don't think people should listen to their body too much, though. That sounds like a catch-22. So like I've had several friends who started it and they're like, oh, I can just tell my body wants some celery juice, or it just wants some green juice, or,
Really?
you know, and I'm like,
The body
they're
really is
like, no,
asking
I
for
really
celery
think my,
juice.
yeah, they're like, I really think my body needs some honey or whatever. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. Don't listen to your body too much. Like, realize that you can do anything for 90 days. You can do this.
Well, that's true. 90 days.
And yeah. And so, like, if you want to make those decisions after 90 days, listen to your body some. But for that first 90 days, I just tell people, like, don't listen to your body. You know, I mean, like obviously listen to it to a degree when you're first starting off. If you're, say, having diarrhea, which is a common experience, I'm told, you know, you want to add some extra sodium to your diet. You know, you don't want to get dehydrated. Listen to your body from that stance, but don't say, okay, I'm having some issues here, I'm gonna either stop or do something else. You know, stick with it and just realize that there's some basic things that have helped all of us through there. You know, add a little extra salt. That's okay.
Yeah.
You know,
no,
make sure you're hydrated.
It's a really incredible reset kind of elimination diet. And so you want to give it the time to do what, so you can see what's happening. And 90 days isn't really good enough, a good time.
Yeah, you need that in order to get the feedback, because then you actually can trust your body. But you can't trust your body when it's addicted to something, because it's going to continue wanting that addiction. And I say addicted, I mean, like, you know, my body had run on sugar for 31 years, basically. And so switching over, of course, it's going to crave what it always has before. That's like going to work and then changing jobs. Well, you're taking the same way, but in one way, you always go left, and then your new job, you go right. Well, invariably, you're going to not be paying attention one morning and want to go left, because you've always gone that way. And so it's just the process of making a different decision. But, you know, once you make an appropriate decision, then you can, it's easy to stick with.
I mean, there's a lot of things that the carnivore diet eliminates. You know, it eliminates polyunsaturated fatty acids for the most time. You know, those PUFAs, it eliminates a lot of vegetables that really do not want to be eaten, that have all kinds of different chemical compounds in them, and it eliminates processed foods. So there's lots of improvements, really, that it all happens together. And you know, sometimes it's harder to tease apart what was the most effective, but it's great. It's great that you saw this improvement, and you look great, you sound good, and I thank you so much for sharing it with us. So,
well, thank you so much for having me on here, and I appreciate your kind words, and I hope other people can enjoy the carnivore lifestyle, which is more than it seems. You know, this diet is more about creating healthy individuals, and as a country, you know, I'll put a little of my spin on this, you know, but as a country, we want healthy individuals.
Absolutely.
And you know, you have to start somewhere, whether it's diet, whether it's, you know, with ensuring that you're getting adequate sunlight, or whatever it may be, being in the right environment. It doesn't matter, you know, but you've got to start somewhere. And this is about as good of a place as any that I can see to start. And the community is great. The carnivore community it's pretty cool to be part of a community that is so helpful to others and active and engaged. When the rest of the country is like trying to tear people apart, you know, the carnivore community is like, come here, we'll help put you back together and get you straightened out. And, you know, even if we disagree with you or whatever else, it's a pretty cool community.
It's a really solid community. And thank you for being in it. Thank you for being in the carnivores with me, Caelin.
Absolutely.
And so we're going to end it here.
Alrighty.
But thank you so much. And Carney on.
All right.